All right, welcome back today, guys. Today we're going to be starting kind of a new video series for our TNReady review. I'm going to make several parts to this. I think probably about 8 or 9 videos, kind of breaking down, looking at each standard and kind of breaking down kind of the key stuff that we need to know for our TNReady test coming up. All right, so basically, I've broken this down into the 9 units. All right, and we are going to look at each standard, kind of hit the highlights, things that we may need to remember for the test, and then we're going to move on. All right, so first we're going to start off with the unit of colonization. That is standard 8.01 through 8.12. Okay, the 8 basically just stands for 8th grade. And then 0.01 to 0.12 are the standards. We have 75 in total. So again, it's going to be broken up into about 9 different parts for each unit. Okay, so here's our first one. Okay, 8.10. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the standard. Okay, and then kind of go through and hit some of these highlights and kind of talk about it. All right, so 8.10, we're going to explain the founding and development of Jamestown as the first permanent English colony, its early struggles, and the economic and political structure, and the role of the Powhatan people. All right, so the Virginia Company was given a charter by King James I to establish a colony in North America. The Virginia Company wanted colonists to find gold and other natural resources. These colonists reached the Chesapeake Bay in Virginia in April of 1607. For their political structure, they voted for and formed the House of Burgesses. This is what the House of Representatives is based on. And they named the colony Jamestown after King James I. Now, Jamestown did have some struggles. They did lack skilled laborers. Okay, so nobody really wanted to do the work. Producing food was a problem, and they had a short supply of fresh water, and disease was rampant. All right, now the Powhatan Indians traded with Jamestown, and they kind of came and helped. The Powhatan introduced Jamestown to tobacco, which became the leading source of money in the Jamestown colony. All right, so next, 8.2, we're going to explain the founding and development of the Plymouth colony, including the significance of the Mayflower Compact, interactions with Squanto, and the role of religious freedom. Okay, so Pilgrims were separatist, meaning they wanted to separate from the Church of England. All right, so they came to America in search of religious freedom. They received permission to settle near Jamestown from the Virginia Company, and they sailed in the Mayflower and landed in Plymouth in 1620. All right, they wrote the Mayflower Compact, which set up a system of self-government. It's the first written plan for democratic government in North America. Squanto was a Patuxent Indian who helped the Pilgrims survive. He introduced the Pilgrims to the Wampanoag Indian chief. He served as an interpreter and set up trade with Native Americans, and he taught the Pilgrims how to grow crops to survive. This led to, of course, the first Thanksgiving in 1601 with the Pilgrims. All right, so 8.03, moving on to Massachusetts Bay. We're going to explain the founding and development of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, including the significance of Anne Hutchinson, the role of theocracy, the Salem witch trials, and town meetings. Okay. So this is the second colony in Massachusetts, the first one being Plymouth with the Pilgrims, the second being Massachusetts Bay. Now, the Puritans wanted to rid the Church of England of its Catholic elements, okay, or they wanted to purify it. Puritans purify. In 1629, a large group of Puritans migrated to Massachusetts Bay, and King Charles I of England gave a charter to the Massachusetts Bay Company in 1629. Now, a year later, in 1630, hundreds of Puritans sailed to New England with their leader, John Winthrop, and set up the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Puritans, again, came for religious freedom, just like the Pilgrims. Their colony, or the colony, formed a government called a theocracy. Okay, where government is run by religious leaders and law. Theo, like theology, the study of religion. Theocracy, the government by religion. Now, town meetings were held in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. They were held in meeting houses where Puritans exercised a form of democracy. Only men who were members of the Puritan Church could vote on laws for their town. Now, Massachusetts Bay also went through witchcraft trials in 1692 because of the strong Puritan beliefs in theocracy. Innocent men and women were put on trial for witchcraft and executed. The last one here, Anne Hutchinson, disagreed with Puritan leaders. She was one of the first female religious leaders in the colonies, and she was put on trial in Massachusetts Bay because of her religious teachings. They banished her from Massachusetts Bay, and she traveled south to Portsmouth, Rhode Island. Okay. So, speaking of Rhode Island, we're going to explain the motivation for and the founding of Rhode Island and the Connecticut colonies, including the roles of Roger Williams and Thomas Hooker. So, let's start with Rhode Island. Roger Williams was the founder of Rhode Island. Remember the R's, Rhode Island, Roger Williams. Williams was banished from Massachusetts Bay because he wanted a separation of church and state. This is where we get the separation of church and state today. So he traveled south and founded Providence Plantation, where church and state were separate. Okay, so the church couldn't, make laws for the government. The government couldn't interfere with the church. All right. Connecticut, on the other hand, was founded by Thomas Hooker. Okay, kind of remember the T's, Connecticut, Thomas. All right, or a hook connects to a piece of fishing line, something like that. Hooker had an issue with Puritan politics. Only male church members who owned land could vote in Massachusetts. And Hooker left Massachusetts Bay and settled the town of Hartford, which became the Connecticut colony. In Connecticut, he made sure that all men had the right to vote. Didn't have to own land, didn't have to be a member of the church. And the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut was the inspiration for the U.S. Constitution and was a democratic system of government. Another example there. All right, 8.05, analyze the economic motivation for the Dutch founding New Netherlands, the diverse population of the colony, and the transition to the English colony of New York. All right, so economic motivation. The Dutch were seeking fortunes in North America, just like the Spanish, just like the English, just like the French. The Dutch built New Netherland in modern day New York using Henry Hudson's discoveries. And in 1621, the Dutch government gave a charter to the Dutch West India Company for the colony. Now, the diversity. New Netherlands had the greatest population diversity in the colonies. Settlers came for religious freedom, to escape war, and to escape disasters. Settlers came from Germany, France, Sweden, Finland, England, Scotland, Ireland, and even Africa to live in New Netherlands. All right, then New Netherlands becomes New York. So England wanted New Netherlands, and war broke out over the colony in 1652. The Duke of York sent soldiers to back up the English claim to New Netherlands. The Dutch governor, Peter Stuyvesant, surrendered, and New Netherlands became New York, named after the Duke of York there. All right, so onward we go. 8.06. Analyze the founding of Pennsylvania as a haven for Quakers and the tolerance that drew many different groups to the colony, including the significance of William Penn, Philadelphia, relationship with American Indians, and the role of women. So King Charles II of England gave the land south of New York and west of New Jersey to William Penn in 1861, and it was named Pennsylvania, meaning Penn's Woods. Okay, so that one's pretty easy to remember, Penn, Pennsylvania. Now, William Penn was a Quaker, and the Quakers wanted religious freedom, so Quakers established the first colony in Pennsylvania. But Pennsylvania became one of the first places to have true religious freedom. Okay, you could practice whatever you want. Now, Pilgrims didn't really have this because they were separatists. All right, and Massachusetts Bay with the Puritans didn't have this because you had to be a member of the church. All right, so Pennsylvania is the first colony to have true religious freedom. Now, Penn believed that women should be educated and speak their ideas freely. He wanted women and men to share equal rights. So, because of Quaker tolerance, many immigrants moved to Pennsylvania, including Scots, Germans, and French. American Indians who were pushed off their land also came to Pennsylvania. Penn bought land from them peacefully. He learned their languages, and he never brought weapons to meetings, which was a change for the Native Americans and the colonists. All right, Philadelphia was the main city in Philadelphia, all right, meaning the city of brotherly love. Okay, so this was kind of Penn's, perfect city almost to a point. That was Philadelphia. All right, so 8.07, we're going to explain the reasons behind the settlement of the Georgia colony, including its designation as a debtor colony, its function as a buffer colony, and the role of James Oglethorpe in its founding. So the founder of Georgia is James Oglethorpe. Remember the OG, he's the OG of Georgia. All right. Oglethorpe wanted to create a colony where debtors could have a fresh start in North America. King George II of England, though, gave a charter to Oglethorpe, but he wanted the colony to help England economically. Okay, give them money, all right, come up with cash crops, stuff like that, and serve as a buffer colony to protect South Carolina from the Spanish in Florida. All right, so he wanted to put a little distance between the Spanish in Florida and the colonists in South Carolina. So that was supposed to be Georgia, was supposed to be this buffer. Now, Oglethorpe reached America in 1733 and selected a high bluff overlooking the Savannah River. He settled that land and designed the new city of Savannah, Georgia. So that was the colony of Georgia. All right. Oglethorpe, again, wanted it to be a place for debtors to go. King George II wanted it to be a buffer colony. All right. 8.08, locate and identify the 13 colonies. We'll do that on the next slide, and describe how their location and geographic features influenced regional economic development. All right, so we have three different colonial regions. We have the New England colonies, the middle colonies or the mid-Atlantic colonies, and the southern colonies. All right, so the New England colonies were Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island. These were heavily forested mountainous areas. They had abundant coastlines and cold winters with short, moderately hot summers. Their natural resources were timber and fish. Capital resources are tools and buildings. And so they're going to specialize in those natural resources. You'll see that throughout these other two. So the New England colonies are going to specialize in fishing, shipbuilding, and naval supply. All right. The middle colonies, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. Their geographic, they have rivers and abundant coastlines, warm summers and mild winters. Their natural resources are rich farmland and fish, capital resources, tools, and buildings. And so they are going to specialize in fishing and producing livestock and grain to feed the livestock. Okay, this is what gets them the nickname of the breadbasket colonies, because they are so good at growing grain, which of course can be made into bread. They're called the breadbasket colonies. All right, the southern colonies, Georgia, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia. They have rivers and hilly coastal plains. They have coastal harbors, and they have a warm climate marked by hot, humid summers. Their natural resources are fertile soil and timber. Capital resources are tools and buildings. So they're going to specialize in cash crops such as rice, tobacco, and indigo, and even wood products. All right, so now we're going to locate and identify those 13 colonies. Again, here's a map. There is also a map game on the review page as well to help you with this. But these are your 13 original colonies. So 8.09, compare and contrast the locations and goals of British, French, and Spanish settlements in North America. All right, so the British goals are power and glory. All right, the more land you have at this time means the more power and more glory you have. So that's why they came here. Mercantilism, export more goods to foreign countries than imports. Obviously, North America is rich in natural resources at this time, so they came here for mercantilism. They also came here for opportunity. All right, it was a new place to start over that had new land, cheap land, so it was a place for opportunity. They also came for religious freedom. Puritans, Pilgrims are great examples of this. They wanted to practice their religion freely. All right, their location is east of the Mississippi River along the Atlantic coast. So east of the Mississippi River along the Atlantic coast, where the 13 original colonies are. All right, the Spanish goals, on the other hand, are the 3 G's. God, okay, they wanted to spread Catholicism to Native Americans. Glory, again, the more land you had, the more glory. And they wanted to find gold here. All right, now their location is the southwest United States into Mexico. All right, so your places like California, New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, all the way down into what is today Mexico is where the Spanish colonies were. The French goals, they wanted to find a northwest trade route. So they wanted to find a faster way to China and India for trading, hopefully by going west instead of having to go around Africa. They also came for the fur trade. They traded furs with Native Americans and then sold them back to Europe. And they also came for religion, all right, to spread Catholicism. Their location is west of the Mississippi River and into Canada. Okay, remember they're the ones that own the Louisiana Purchase that they will sell to us later on. All right, 8.10 or 8.10. Identify the origins and development of slavery in the colonies, overt and passive resistance to enslavement, and the Middle Passage. So plantations started to spring up in the colonies to produce sugarcane and tobacco, these cash crops. These plantations needed laborers, and colonists didn't want to do it. So the plantation owners first began to enslave Native Americans. Now, European diseases killed many Native Americans, so they looked for a new source of labor. So the slave trade developed across the Atlantic Ocean. The first African slaves arrived in 1619, and African slaves became the labor source for North America. Now you have overt and passive resistance. Overt is very open. Okay, there can sometimes be violent. Okay, but they're open forms of resistance. These are slave rebellions and running away are your two main examples. Your passive resistance is working slowly, breaking tools, stealing, faking illnesses, and expressing themselves through music and religion. Passive is a little more under the radar, kind of playing it cool. All right, the Middle Passage, last thing here, is the section of the triangle trade between Africa and the Americas. And is how slave ships brought African slaves to the Americas. All right. So 8.11, describe the significance of the First Great Awakening, including its role in unifying the colonies and the growth of religious tolerance. So the First Great Awakening was a religious revival during the early 1700s. Ministers wanted to make a change and bring a spark to people's religious lives. Ministers like Jonathan Edwards traveled from town to town, giving firing sermons to stir people's emotions and make them reconnect with God. Now, the significance of this, it's the first national event shared by all the colonies. All the colonies participated in the First Great Awakening. And it helped develop a common identity among people swept up by its power. It also led to more religious tolerance and unity within the colonies because religious diversity increased. All right. And the last one for this video, 8.12, we're going to explain the Navigation Acts and the policy of mercantilism. So the Navigation Acts were trade laws that kept colonists from selling their products to any other country besides England. These acts made sure that England had control of trade and the wealth produced in the colonies. It also made sure that England had secure markets for its products in the colonies. But resistance soon formed in response, and colonists resorted to smuggling or bringing in goods illegally. Now, mercantilism is when a country needs to export more goods to foreign countries than it imported. All right, so you want to sell more than you buy. So England used the colonies in North America to provide raw materials, timber, tobacco, cotton, in order to produce these manufactured goods. Okay, cotton would then turn into clothes. The timber would be for ships, building ships. All right, so that is the first section of our review. That is colonization. That is 8.01 to 8.12. All right. Again, if you want to jot any of these notes down, you're more than welcome to. And if you have any questions, just let me know. If not, then we'll see y'all next time.